Hello and welcome everyone to the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance's Crypto Roundup for Friday, October 18th, 2024. Ron Quaranta here with David Brill and Josh Klayman, my amazing colleagues, friends, and co-hosts. Before we begin, thank you all for tuning in. Our usual disclaimers, please keep in mind that nothing discussed is any sort of accounting, investment, legal, or tax advice. The three of us are not endorsing any particular tokens. And obviously, if you have questions for us, please put them in the chat. Our opinions are our own, don't necessarily represent the opinions of our firms. And if you're watching us, please subscribe, please like, please share this with your colleagues. LinkedIn, X, YouTube. It's always a lot of fun, and I'm grateful to be here with David and Josh. Josh, David, good to see you both.
Great to see you,
Ron.
For the record, for everyone in the audience, they literally just got off of a call with me about a half hour ago and are already sick and tired of talking. But David, Josh, good to see you both. Another eventful week in our space. Real quick shout out to all our colleagues and friends. Our event is coming up. I just want to headline with this, David and Josh. Next week, Thursday, is our WSBA Crypto and Blockchain Summit in New York City. Josh will be there. David will be there. So many of our colleagues and friends, and so many firms that are sponsors, including FTI Consulting. David, a privilege. Thank you so much. But let's get to the news. Josh, we've got a lot of regulatory stuff and legal stuff as well. But David, I'm already tossing the script. I've got to go with the markets on this. Gold hits an all-time high this week, David, 2,700 and change. I'm going to ask, David, you and I watch the markets a lot. What is the gold market telling us?
Well, I mean, telling you that in some ways, it's really a very interesting dynamic because some people are rushing to sort of, something that's not the dollar that they deem as safe, and that they think that, if the dollar is sort of being devalued a little bit, that's a very safe asset to be. And you're seeing a lot of people doing that. Then on the crypto side, I think we're really starting to catch up now this week. And we're really starting to roll into October. And, we're up, I think, maybe 11, 12% for the week here. And really very bullish on our prospects, especially if we stay above 68,500. I think there's a good chance, we could, I think there's a good chance if we close above this, that we could see an all-time high before the end of the month, or maybe the end of the week, next week.
David, to that point real quickly, and Josh, please do weigh in, but is this, people running to gold, is this a safe haven play? And is that part of the Bitcoin price increase over the past couple of weeks?
So I don't think it is. I think if they were running in tandem, they should have run in tandem before. I think this is just sort of, when you look at the yearly cycles, the last 3 months of the year have traditionally been good for Bitcoin, in October in particular. Yeah. So we're seeing that here. And then also, we're going to talk about this some more, but again, not talking about the candidates, about voting for them, but just looking at their platforms and looking at it broad strokes. Stanley Druckenmiller said yesterday that he doesn't think that the market's yet priced in what he thinks is or is starting to price in, I should say, a Trump win in the election and the benefits of that for the markets, and especially crypto. So, we may start seeing some of that, and Polymarket and Predicted are starting to show those numbers too.
Yeah, Josh, weigh in here. When you replenish your gold stockpile and you see prices like $2,700 an ounce, what are your thoughts?
I mean, well, so I don't know that I have specific thoughts about gold, although I will say, as we all know, Bitcoin has been likened to digital gold. So, and the mining and other sorts of metaphors or symbolism would seem to apply. I am wondering, though, your thoughts, guys, about, and David, you started to go into it about the election. I mean, even with things like, for example, Doge, some are saying that as a result of Elon Musk's donations to the Trump campaign and the proposal to have a Department of Governmental Efficiency, which cleverly spells out Doge, so that is actually having an impact on that price. Are you guys? What do you think? What do you think we'll see?
I'll weigh in with saying he's the king of appropriate acronyms. How he puts that together is stunning to me. I mean, David, I'd love your opinion as well. For me, it's always hype aside and having these conversations, Josh, that you raise about Department of Government Efficiency, which we can have that philosophic question for hours. what's the actual use case if we're talking about something like Doge? David, you and I can talk about meme coins as well, and we have perspectives on that. But someone show me the use case for it and how it gets implemented and what's the UX for it, and I think that'll define where the market goes for that. But David, do you agree?
So it's funny on a fundamental basis. I totally agree. But on like a trading basis, it just seems like the meme coins are trading in tandem with Bitcoin, and that
Right.
they're tending to go up when Bitcoin goes up and down when it goes down. And this oxymoron of the higher value meme coins, so to speak, are trading in tandem. And Ron and I had talked about Doge before this announcement, and I think I put in a group chat with Ron and Josh that, like, as I was looking at that chart, it looked like it was ready to go up. And it did end up going up before this announcement, and then obviously when Elon talks about it, it goes up. But I do want to make a funny comment that if Elon were to put this Department of Government Efficiency to work, and if they were to slash a number of government jobs in the new administration, I think that would have the unintended consequence of pushing up the unemployment rate significantly. And so,
Well, most of the
that could
hiring is
create,
government hiring.
because that's really, unfortunately, that's been where a lot of the hiring's been the last few months, and that's why the employment numbers are what they are. So I think it's a very interesting dynamic that could unfold. But look, I think with the meme coins, I do think in the future that as social tokens and community tokens, that they will have an impact and there'll be value. And I could see boldface names having their own meme coin and having a community around it and value to that. But it doesn't feel like we're there yet.
Josh, I believe this is the first time you've heard it, but did you think we'd ever hear the phrase quality meme coins in conversation when we started this years ago?
I mean, I don't know that we were necessarily even thinking of meme coins way back then,
Yeah.
but lo and behold.
David, thank you, Josh. David, you said something interesting, and you use this phrase a lot. And I think it's a wonderful phrase, and I certainly understand where you're coming from. But for the audience, you say social token. Can you, I'm throwing up, ripping up the script a little bit here. Can you peel that back a little bit? What do you see as the future? What is a social token in that kind of mindset?
So I could see a band or, a band having their own social token.
Mm-hmm.
And then before they go on tour, there are benefits of having that token. Maybe people who hold the tokens get to do an early pre-sale. And I see my dog Amber over here is very interested.
Amber
in the
deserves her own social token, for the record.
Yes, she's very interested in Doge and the other dog tokens. But all kidding aside, I could really see that, like, music groups who are about to tour, or in general, like, give the people who hold their tokens a chance to buy tickets earlier, maybe get songs earlier, get other benefits, maybe get benefits at the concerts themselves and fan clubs. And this could be really like the monetizing of fan clubs through tokens in a way that we haven't seen before.
Is this an evolution of loyalty and reward points, David?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, for this sort of fan club part of it. I mean, I think I think we'd already have sort of loyalty and affinity tokens in the US if we had more permissive, legislation right now. I think that's really, we have the technology. Like, all of your loyalty programs could be on the blockchain now, and they are in other countries. But for some reason, and our, obviously with the regulation here, it just isn't affording that opportunity right now.
Josh, Amber heard chain and didn't like it and barked at David. Josh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. So one of the things with loyalty points in general, and this is just like a broader concept that I know we're all familiar with. I think one of the challenges is that often loyalty points, like if you think of airline miles or stuff, they're really hard to transfer.
Yes.
Right. And so that's one of the sticking points often when you think about why we don't have more tokenized loyalty points, because some of the ways that people have gotten comfortable historically have been that you can't just transfer them. I do think, though, going with the idea of the social coin, there's a lot of promise with certain projects, in terms of identifying new up and coming artists on various formats, right? Where you could sort of how people are found on YouTube or things like that, or, just posting videos. but trying to use tokens to reward people in that way, and also build fan bases in that way, as opposed to just well-established bands or other groups.
Josh, I'm going to go a bit wonky here, and I'm probably going to screw it up. So if anyone in the audience knows better as well, but you mentioned transferability and interoperability. That's very, very difficult in the loyalty and reward space. And they're usually held by large companies as deferred liabilities on their balance sheet. So I'm probably screwing up the accounting and audit of it. Someone in the audience tell me if I'm incorrect, but that means many companies have an incentive not to let those tokens or those loyalty points be transferred. So it'll be interesting to see what that disruption in the space looks like. Josh, do you have clients? And again, I know you can't mention specific clients, but do you see things like social tokens or loyalty points kind of based blockchains as clients? David, same thing for you and your firm. Is this more of the dialogue from clients?
I mean, depending on the type of client, I think yes. Yes. So I would say both in terms of the sort of rewards and loyalty to for sourcing talents and things like that, but also more broadly, some very well established players in e-commerce. I'll just keep it broad.
Yep.
Have been exploring these sorts of things, and that's really globally, not limited to the U.S.
Yeah, David, what about you?
Yeah, we've worked with clients overseas, like Josh said, who have implementing loyalty programs. And look, there's an ability to do it, and you could create a whole ecosystem of loyalty tokens and make them interoperable. Maybe an airline with a hotel, and maybe restaurants and other things that are adjacent to it. So I think there's the ability there, and there's interest with some of the different airlines and other entities to have these interoperable tokens and ecosystems. But again, I think really easier to do and implement overseas and not here in the US.
That might change with the election coming up, David and Josh. And in the context of all of that, we can't be remiss and avoid talking about law and regulation. I want to dive into one of the things in the news. And Josh, David, I'm certain I've missed some other legal news in the crypto space, but I want to bring up the Coinbase fight with the SEC. And if I remember the article, they've kind of escalated the battle to get internal communications. That may not be the biggest legal issue that the crypto industry is seeing. But let me ask this question, David. Is Coinbase going to this well too much to try to get some of the internal communications?
Look, again, I'm not working with them on this, but I support an aggressive approach. Like, litigation, this has been, obviously contentious litigation, and you want to get every advantage you can. And if they feel that there's a rationale to have access to these documents, then they should aggressively pursue that, and they are. Mm-hmm. So, no, I think their posture is appropriate, and you want every advantage you can have in these litigations, and they're seeking to get an advantage that they believe they're entitled to.
Josh, weigh in on this, and love your perspectives. And what are the other legal and regulatory news that have hit the wire? It's certainly not been a quiet week.
So with respect to the matter that you just mentioned, I agree with David, and I'm limited in what I can say generally. But I would say, I would imagine that if they're I understand that it relates to FOIA requests and things like that. And so I would imagine that there are probably some pretty technical arguments that are being made about timing and things like that. That I would imagine that those closest to the case would have the most information on, and presumably they're doing, as David said, good faith efforts in their client's best interest. Yeah. I think some other interesting things, I don't know if you guys saw, but it was reported, including in Cointelegraph, that at a conference called Ripple Swell 2024, Stuart Alderati, if I'm saying that correctly, of Ripple, interviewed Adrienne Harris, who is the superintendent for New York DFS. And she's viewed by many as, one of the most powerful regulators. In fact, according to this article called New York DFS's Chief's Advice for Crypto Firms, quote, never surprise your regulator, she's been called the most powerful crypto regulator in the US. I think what's interesting about this, she gave a quote, I guess, in direct response to the question of what advice would you give the industry when we show up to talk to our regulators. She said, "You should never, ever surprise your regulator. We don't like surprises. The best advice I can give is that if we read about it before we hear about it, we're already on the wrong foot." So it is very interesting, and it does appear to echo some things that we've heard from other regulators over time. In fact, it's quoted that Harris said that cryptocurrency firms, digital asset related firms, should, quote, come in, talk to us about your 5-year business plan. So it's interesting to think about the regulatory approach and what lawyers may advise their clients or what clients may determine to do, especially when we've seen litigation unfolding and continuing to unfold over the past several years.
That sounds suspiciously like come in and register, Josh, which, as colleagues know, is difficult. I'm going to throw this tougher curve at us, but when you brought up NYDFS, Josh, David, and this is actually a serious question. Is it easier to get an NYDFS BIT license in New York than it is to register as a special purpose broker dealer with the SEC?
Well, I guess in sheer numbers, it would be. Look, I don't know that it would be, from a paperwork standpoint, that difficult to get a special purpose broker dealer if there was the willingness to engage with the parties to actually go through with that. And I can only speak anecdotally that I think we've only seen one or maybe two, but look, I think the challenge to your previous point, like if you're regulated with DFS, you have to give, I believe, at least a 3-year business plan as part of like your filing or as part of your mandatory sort of yearly audits. But I can see why crypto companies would be circumspect about sharing all of their plans, especially the ones further out with the regulators until they've really fully formulated them. Otherwise, risking getting into some contentious disagreements prior to even sort of ideating and bringing it to market.
And it's not like you can get a regulator to sign an NDA. And for the record, I just want to interject real quickly. You said regulators, and we've been bringing them up, and Amber started barking.
Yeah, Amber's not a fan of regulatory capture, that's for sure.
Josh, go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting about the BIT license, obviously, it was extremely unpopular when it first launched. And I think people have become, in some ways, more comfortable with it over time, right? Because as David has noted, people have gotten BIT licenses. Of course, some projects still exclude New York. I think one of the challenges is that determining that something is not a virtual currency business activity is hard, right? Because it's a pretty sweeping interpretation that has been given often. So that's said without any kind of judgment attached to that, but just, yeah.
Josh and David, thank you both so much. Go ahead, David.
I had one other criticism that I hear frequently about registering with DFS is that New York residents are really limited in the tokens they have access to. And at this point in time in the ecosystem, a lot of people really scratch their head and wonder why that still is the case. So, hopefully, whoever wins the next administration, we get more clarity on the status of tokens so that New Yorkers can have more access to tokens that they currently have.
David, Josh, thank you both. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
I was just going to say, when you compare New York DFS though to others, like I've often heard it said that actually one should be more afraid of the New York AG, right? In terms of activity, not that one should be necessarily fearful of anyone, right? As opposed to working with regulators, but that actually that's.
Josh, David, thank you both so much. For everyone in the audience, again, thank you so much for joining us. If you've got questions or comments, and I'm sorry the sun has decided to park right here, guys, so apologies for that. But if you've got questions for Josh or David or myself, please put them in the chat. David, if we could, I hate to do this, but I've got to go back to the economic stuff as well. I was listening to some of the news this morning, and you and I often talk about, having dry powder on the sidelines. There are trillions of dollars sitting out there in cash essentially waiting to be deployed. And you often hear about, markets going up, equity markets and crypto markets, not as broad based as it could be even in the wake of these price increases. And it's interesting, money market funds, David, are still holding trillions of dollars, even though the Fed has begun to ease. And the truth of the matter is, millions of people have money sitting in bank accounts or money market funds getting 4%. Why would they move it? Coming out of a world where they got zero for 15 years.
Well, look, I think it certainly makes sense to have some of their allocation in cash or bonds. And so, especially for older folks, like it makes perfect sense for them to do that. And look, it's interesting. The S&P and NASDAQ are up over 20% for the year. You don't know who's going to win the election. You may have a view of one candidate or the other and what the economy may do after they win. So I think in some ways it makes perfect sense. Some people may have just taken some chips off the table and said, look, I had a great year. I'm up 20+%. Why, take volatility into the election and take some chips off the table? And I think the other thing I'll say is it's not easy when a market's at an all-time high to be like, oh, this is a great time to get in. Like you kind of feel like you missed that last 20% or, in other markets, you missed the run up. So I think there's some psychology to that. So I would say election uncertainty and, the gains this year have been, substantial, and it makes it such that, I don't know. I think it's, I think for some people it's hard to get in the market now when you missed on these gains or be fully invested when you've had these
Josh,
gains.
weigh in on this. You've got 9 digits sitting in several money market funds. Are you waiting for some kind of are you waiting for post the election or the end of the year to start allocating? And again, we joke about pulling you into this kind of economic or trading conversation, but how do you see it?
I mean, I tend to think that ordinary people, as opposed to professional investors, right? They're more likely to move their money, I think, when they see amounts going up, values going up, right? As opposed to when they see them down, when it might be a good bargain. So I think to the extent that we continue to see a run up in the price of Bitcoin or other types of digital assets, not that I comment on price per se, but I think, in addition, if we think about what the polls and what prediction markets have said about the likelihood of a Trump victory or a Republican sweep, which some things would be favorable, right? And at the same time, Kamala Harris having talked about digital assets and although not giving specifics, had given some sort of assurance about crypto regulatory framework future, right? That perhaps as the numbers continue to climb, if they do, that will cause people to reallocate. But I think we've probably talked about this in prior roundups as well. I don't think that necessarily what might be the best investing strategy for people is what regular people actually do.
Right. And it's the Buffett formula, and I'm just paraphrasing it, right, David? It's buy when everyone's selling and sell when everyone's buying, which is, that's not how the retail investor looks at it. David, let's get your perspectives on this. And we had this conversation this week and for those of you in the audience who aren't aware, we're privileged to have David chairs our crypto asset working group. Josh chairs our legal working group. David, we discussed the election and the impact on global markets and the impact on crypto assets. David, is it not the presidential election that's most important? Is it the Senate?
So look, I think it's both. But I do think the Senate's very important as far as the banking committee goes and appointments of chairs of the regulatory committees, the regulatory agencies, and getting those nominations approved. So I think from a crypto perspective, and there's different entities that have written sort of articles about this, but if the Republicans were to win the Senate, it is viewed very favorably for crypto that bills that we want to see brought, whether it be Fit 21 or other bills or the appointments of agency heads, it would be more favorable under a Republican administration and them leading the Senate. And Citigroup went so far as to say that they feel that if the Republicans were to sweep, that would be very bullish for crypto. both to see Fit 21 approved, getting heads of regulatory agencies favorable to crypto, and to get a broader climate for crypto that's more favorable. So that's Citigroup's view, and that was reported in CoinDesk this morning. So, look, I think that, former President Trump was very clear on what his view of crypto assets are. He even released his own DeFi token. So I think he definitely has a view on crypto. I think, I have only seen it sort of secondhand, but some people are sort of a little bit critical of what Vice President Harris said, because she didn't sort of frame her crypto views in sort of a crypto audience, but she framed it as, benefits for one minority group, and that, making it better for that minority group, that's why she would be interested in doing it, or put the announcement in favor with that minority group. And I don't know that landed broadly like it would have landed if it was on its own platform.
Yeah, and to be clear for everyone in the audience, we have not analyzed the former president's token offering, nor is any of this a recommendation for that at all. Josh, go ahead, weigh in.
No, you said, I think, what I was going to say, actually.
Well, Josh, David, thank you both. For everyone in the audience, again, thank you so much for joining us. Please please share with your colleagues. Please subscribe on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube. We'll be adding to a bunch of different podcast platforms as well. As the sun sears my face. It's been one of those broadcasts. David, Josh, we've only got a couple of minutes left. We've got our big event next week. And again, thank you both. Thank your firms for all the work that you do as members. Thanks to all of our sponsors. For those of you who are still in the audience and interested in joining in the New York City area, time is limited. We have very few tickets left, but go to the website, WSBA.co, register and join us and meet David and Josh in person. David, what are you and Josh, what are you both looking forward to speaking about next week? We're going to have an ecosystem and an attendance of professionals across many different verticals, all focused on crypto assets and tokenization and blockchain. David, let's start with you. What are you looking forward to talking about next week?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful to have some, really great co-panelists, and I'm really looking forward to talking about an institutional view of crypto. Like, we're going to talk about what we see crypto companies doing with their profits, or doing with some of their treasury, and how they're reallocating it and what they're looking to do. And also, we have a number of clients who are looking, either strategics or people in the crypto space looking at making investments in other crypto projects or other TradFi projects. So we'll talk about that at a high level. And then also really staring into what next year looks like in terms of, from a regulatory standpoint, and highlighting some of the accomplishments that have happened this year in the space, and what the possibilities are for next year.
David, thanks so much. Josh, again, you'll be paneling on one of our important panels as well. As David, legal and regulatory. What are your thoughts? What's the conversation going to be? And I would ask, how does that differ from the conversations that you and I and David started years ago about law and crypto?
So, wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm excited to be talking about with the panelists are questions relating to kind of the things we've talked about today, which is what's happening with the election, what's going to happen, like what are the potential ramifications. I also think, with respect to the legal panel in particular, which is law and regulation, seismic shifts, and what the future may hold. We've got such a great mix of people from industry, litigators, transactional lawyers. I think inevitably there are new developments, and so we'll be touching upon those, whatever the latest breaking news will be. Yeah. But yeah, how does it differ from what we were contemplating, a long time ago? Well, I mean, who could have foreseen all of this?
Where do you even begin to recap the history we've all gone through, Josh? David, Josh, thank you both so much. Last word, we're going to cut it a little bit short today. Everyone's super busy. And by the way, for the record, I've shared this with you both. For everyone in the audience, event planning is actually the hardest industry in the world. But David, Josh, I wanted to end how we started, and I probably bring up Elon Musk way too much. He hasn't responded to my invitations to join us for this live stream, but we'll see where that goes. The other news item, David, that popped up was, and I'm paraphrasing, but apparently Tesla had moved something on the order of $750 million worth of Bitcoin. We discussed it at the Crypto Asset Working Group, and I have colleagues in crypto who reached out and said, "This is it, big moves being planned." It might be a bit more prosaic than that, David. Correct?
Yes, I think there's two things going on. One is, look, crypto's had a nice run, and there's no shame in taking some profits. And so that perhaps Tesla decided that, with some of their holdings, they want to monetize it. And look, it helps with earnings on some level too, probably, and they may want to monetize it. One of our colleagues in the Crypto Asset Working Group also mentioned that, they may want to have moved it to, certain types of wallets as new regulations are coming into effect with regards to trading wallets and wallets being associated with companies. So I think that certainly is another reasonable approach. I mean, look, I think in one way it would be a little strange to sell right before the election. I think a number of us in the space feel like there's some upward momentum in October and opportunities here. But look, they're running a business, and I think we can only speculate so much on why they're moving it. But look, even if they wanted to take profits here, I think it's perfectly reasonable to do that. So I think that's how I'm looking at it.
Josh, when Musk calls you up and asks what he should do with his crypto, how do you respond?
Take a number. Just kidding. But by the way, on the Crypto and Blockchain Summit, just in case this hasn't been said, and if I'm wrong, then you
And we just lost Josh.
Wow.
here. I'm still here. Can you guys hear me?
You did not get cut off by us. Go ahead, Josh.
Wow, that was so weird. I guess it was Elon. He was a little salty. But yeah, no, I was gonna say the summit is going to be under Chatham House rules.
Yep.
So actually we will be delving into things that perhaps we might not ordinarily do if it were something that was going to be recorded or live streamed or something like that. So that's another reason, if you can, to try and catch
Please
us.
join us. That is Josh's way of telling everyone in the audience, if you can join us in person, you can hear the things she can't say right now on live stream. But Josh, really appreciate it. David, Josh, beyond the event, and obviously that's eating up a lot of our time, everyone's got at least a full-time job, if not more, in this space. David, what are you going to be looking at from a data perspective or news perspective in the coming week?
Well, besides having ample amounts of reading to do for work and a lot of client work, I would say I'll really be focused on price closes. Want to see a Bitcoin close above 68,500 in the next day or two and see if we can keep this momentum. We didn't really get a chance to talk about Ethereum at all, but Ethereum has not gone up in tandem with Bitcoin. But, as I've been looking at it, I really feel like, there's a rally that could be there. And so I really think if it closes above 2,700, that there's an opportunity for it to, revisit the 3,000 range. So I'm really paying attention to that. And then I'm really, looking into a lot of the election and where things are moving, because I think that if we see some rapid appreciation in the crypto markets, we may start seeing a Trump win being priced in. And again, we're not advocating one way or the other. We're just talking about what the market views. But, I think if we close today strongly, I think we could see an all-time high by the end of next week in Bitcoin. So I'll be certainly watching the markets and, keeping an open eye on what's going on.
Josh is laughing because she knows what I'm thinking. And my thought is that all-time high is still not going to help me.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
My face was very transparent.
I believe David has settled on, is it Porterhouse, David? Hopefully Josh is okay with that choice.
So right now, Porterhouse is the number one stake choice from the unofficial polling. And maybe we'll have to do a poll before the end of the year, but it's the Porterhouse, Strip House, and Peter Luger are 1, 2, 3 right now, Ron.
I am so looking forward to it. Josh, bring us home. Let's wrap it all up. What are your thoughts? What are you going to be looking forward to in the coming week? And what's going on with work?
Work is going gangbusters. So I would say I'll be very focused on work and a variety of different matters. I think it continues to be an exciting time. And as we've talked about in the past, a lot of projects that had perhaps been put off, people are are really jumping into with both feet. And I would just say that I'm continually surprised by the level. I shouldn't be surprised, but like some of the crossover that I'm seeing right now between really established non-digital native brands and folks and our digital native friends. There's really exciting stuff going on. So that will be my primary focus. I think also, like David, I'll be reading up um, on news and also any enforcement actions that come out between now and next week. But yeah, I mean, what about you, Ron? Anything exciting?
I am excited for the event. I'm looking forward to seeing all of our great colleagues and friends who will be flying in. I will also be on a panel, so I'm looking forward to, as you both mentioned, kind of the deep conversation with our colleagues. I'm going to be deep diving as well into two things for our other working groups. One is RevRec 2024-28 in the accounting world. Don't ask me, I'm not an accountant, but there's a lot of deep analysis we're going to be doing with our colleagues and friends at AICPA, as well as David and Josh. You and I had a conversation earlier today. We've been doing deep dives with some of our members in different working groups, and the Uniform Commercial Code has come up, which is even deeper complications to some of the things that we're looking at. So guess what I'm doing? UCC reading this weekend if I have problems sleeping. I feel David's sympathy for me coming through the restream.
I mean, look, it's really important. The UCC is an important part of commercial transactions and securing, your assets. But that's tough reading for a lawyer, and even tougher reading for a non-lawyer, Ron. So I feel for you on that.
Yeah, I've stocked up on caffeine, David. We'll see how the Red Bull helps me this weekend. David, Josh, thank you both so much. Such a privilege. For everyone in the audience, again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, please like, please share with friends. If you've got questions for us that we missed, info@wsba.co. I hope some of you can join us at the event Thursday of next week. And that is a wrap for this week. See you all next week. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.